All right, everyone. Link in the description, archived, of course. Interesting new study saying that the U.S. economy should fall into a severe recession sometime fairly soon, towards the end of this year or possibly sometime next year. I think that it depends sort of on the election, number one. If Trump is reelected, consumer confidence will rise, regulatory policy will ease back, tax cuts will be extended, business growth I think will be higher. And so you might be able to avoid some of what would be coming. You might still have a recession, but probably not as sharp. If Biden is reelected, I think that business confidence and consumer confidence will tank. I think inflation will continue, and I think that, yeah, I would agree there's going to be a recession. Again, it sort of depends on what sort of fiscal policy the United States embarks on. One that is sane or one that is insane. I think a lot of people, though, will spread this article around and they'll say, well, this is basically if Trump is elected, the stock market will collapse. Krugman predicted that back in 2016. Well, the United States will basically fall into another Great Depression if Donald Trump is elected. In fact, the opposite happened. The economy was roaring ahead until COVID lockdowns, and it's actually Biden that cooked the economy and fucked it up for the most part. Will there be a severe collapse? In the long term, it is inevitable. Eventually, the stock market will have another conundrum. Eventually, there will be a hyperinflationary period. Eventually, X, Y, and Z will happen. That's just the nature of economies, especially when they are micromanaged by regulators, they're micromanaged by bureaucrats and things like that. We create the boom and bust cycle by not simply engaging in more free market capitalism. A more malleable, flexible economy is a more powerful one. It's a more stable one. You have short-term periods of dysfunction, things get reabsorbed, and it's more easy to do that. Under the kind of economic policies the United States has been using now for more than half a century, you actually create more boom and bust cycles. It's like people going back to the roaring 20s when the music stops, and then you have the Great Depression. A lot of people want to blame that on the free market. It was actually the result of government policy more than anything else. Again, that same micromanagement. And that was back then. The regulatory burden in 1925 is not exactly the same as in 2025. We've got another 20s. We started them off with, actually, instead of the roaring 20s, it was more like the sour 20s more than anything. If we get Trump back, we can probably have a little bit more sunshine on our backs. It's an interesting article, and it's based on what's called the Phillips curve. I do not understand enough, particularly about economics. I have some understanding of it, which is why I'm talking about it at all. But I'm no fiscal expert, and so I'm not going to bother with the analysis of the actual article itself. You can read that for yourself if you're more financially minded than I am. Maybe Chris Whalen, CPA, maybe he can make a video on the subject and tell us what the Phillips curve is. And you can give him a board as a guest sometime again. Yeah, eventually there will be a recession. I don't know that you know exactly when it'll happen. And predicting within economics is always a difficult thing. If we could predict economics much more adequately, then we could avoid a lot of problems. But it's kind of difficult. Again, it's all about, what are the businesses doing? Did this group of farms get decimated by locusts, and now corn prices are twice as high and stuff like that? All of those little components make an economy, and so it's a little bit difficult. Again, most economists, they have a spotty track record of actually guesstimating what's going to happen in the future. If they could guess exactly what was going to happen in the future, if they literally had a crystal ball, well, then they wouldn't be working in economics. They would just be investors. That's the only thing that they would do. They would parlay their various commodities and stocks off against each other, and they would make a shit ton of money. And generally speaking, they don't appear to be willing to do that. But anyway, yeah, economic downturn, considering the amount of debt, considering the sticky inflation, considering the low business confidence, you do have a recipe for disaster. I think that re-electing Donald Trump may stave off the worst of it. But here's the other point. Donald Trump, if he does inherit an economy that then goes into recession, who gets the blame? Well, not the regulators, not the shitty economic policy of the past. Trump will get the blame. And you know that the liberal media, the stories have already written themselves if something like that happens. Well, Donald Trump's magic wand has dried up or something like that. We told you that Trump didn't understand managing money. Look at Atlantic City or something like that. The stories write themselves. If it were to happen under Biden's watch, somehow they'd probably blame Orange Man still anyway. Well, you remember that one deregulation he did back in 2018? Well, it really came home to roost now. It'd be a hilarious propaganda. I'm hoping that it doesn't happen. I would rather not have a recession. I'd rather not see, the Great Recession. Something like 20% of all the houses in Rutland went up they were foreclosed and shit like that. They were up for sale. People moved, it just decimated Rutland. And then landlords, basically, they took up the properties and then they rented. That's why so many people rent in Rutland now instead of owning their own homes. A lot of those so-called single-family homes, they're not single-family homes at this point. It's become a rental structure, actually, more than anything else. So we'll hope for the best, but you should probably prepare for the worst. That's generally good advice. That's about all. Peace out.